In the unending shadow of the outer fringe, where even the faintest starlight failed to reach, a murmur traveled through the void, a murmur of annihilation. No one could trace its origin, but the aftermath was unmistakable. Systems that once thrived with trade, pride, and dominion now lay shattered, cores fractured, fleets obliterated, rulers either slain or vanished. No warnings were given, no declarations made, just silence. And then fire. Before the collapse, they called us primitive. Earth, that tiny blue dot, clung to its fragile existence on the galactic map. We weren't part of the Galactic Council. We weren't even recognized as a sovereign species. By their reckoning, we were still waging wars with crude bullets and clumsy atmospheric vehicles. Maybe they were right in the surface, but deep below, buried under oceanic trenches and hidden. Within forsaken moons, we forged gods. He remembered the first, not the warship itself, but the meeting that birthed it. General Tuvok wasn't meant to be there, just a mid-tier strategist with too many scars and too little patience. But fate played its hand when the senior chair collapsed from a stroke hours before, and Tuvok, frayed by recycled air and mounting stress, stumbled into history. The room was sterile, lit by the cold glow of secure facilities. Around him sat faceless architects of Earth's shadow government figures, whose decisions shaped nations yet never graced headlines. They spoke sparingly, needing no words. One simply rotated a screen. On it, a prototype gleamed. WS-01. World Ship 1. A hollowed asteroid core, Neptune-sized, fused with trillions of tons of synthetic alloys and a quantum AI brain reverse-engineered. From stolen Perthuri technology, the sort of construct you don't create unless you intend to redefine warfare. Tuvok stared at it for 5 seconds before speaking the only words that mattered. How many do we have? It was 23 years ago. Now he stood on the command bridge of WS-07, merciless, hovering above what was once the Trion capital. Their planetary defenses weren't bypassed. They were eradicated, obliterated before they knew what hit them. The warship had slipped into their system, cloaked behind a solar flare surge, its power core masked. When it struck, there were no missiles, just gravity. One command, and the planet split apart like an overripe fruit. Tuvok didn't flinch, didn't exult, didn't even blink. This wasn't vengeance. This was a message. The Galactic Council had spent decades subjugating weaker species, exploiting, enslaving, stripping entire worlds bare, and reshaping cultures to suit their agendas. Earth had learned its lessons in blood. The Varnak Purge cost humanity 13 colonies and over 6 billion lives. No sanctions were imposed, no trials held only, the laughter of council delegates echoing in sterile chambers. So humanity vanished, or so it seemed. They retreated from trade, let their infrastructure crumble in plain sight, and allowed the galaxy to believe they were fractured, dying. But beneath false ruins and ice-choked wastelands, they forged machines designed to rewrite destiny. Empires had mocked them then. Now they begged. Tuvok turned toward his AI interface, a sleek obsidian disk embedded into the command rail. OFWS-09. Cloaked, positioned above Delsarai Prime's sun. Awaiting ignition, the AI replied in its calm monotone. And casualties from the Traven strike? Planetary losses, 9.3 billion. Fleet losses, 476 capital ships. Resistance, none. He gave a curt nod. Broadcast the message. Behind him, a shimmering globe of light flickered to life, sending ripples across subspace. The transmission short, unyielding, erupted across every council channel. This is not war. This is reckoning. You hunted us when we were weak. Now, you fall in silence one by one. No mercy. No treaty. Earth does not forget. The message ended. Across the galaxy, empires shuddered. Tuvok stood unmoving, watching the remnants of Travan's cities burn in the void. Wasn't a hero, he was a warning. And the warnings had only just begun. They called it the Varnak Purge. Officially, it was never labeled genocide. No tribunals were convened. No apologies offered. In the Galactic Council's archives, it was coldly categorized as a resource reclamation event. But Tuvok remembered. He hadn't been on the colony itself. He'd been stationed aboard a patrol ship in the outer Kuiper Belt when the news came. At the time, he was one of Earth Fleet's youngest officers, still foolishly optimistic enough to believe diplomacy could work, that the Council might listen to reason. He would never forget the footage. It came from a Trinarian courier vessel, carrying the last images of Earthlight 7. The skies burned crimson as orbital platforms melted. Cities crumbled, and the screams of children echoed before being silenced by fusion blasts. Within moments, entire atmospheres had been stripped away. The Varnock claimed Earthlight 7 had violated galactic mining regulations, accusing humanity of trespassing and theft. The Council didn't even allow Earth to defend itself. The vote for sanctions was unanimous, and Earth learned that reason was no shield against cruelty. Rewritten text, allowing the Varnocks to enforce compliance, was a death sentence, an unspoken agreement to hand over 6 billion lives to executioners. Tuvok's brother Ryan had been among them, logistics technician with a quick wit and grease-stained hands. Ryan used to send Tuvok messages filled with old Earth jokes and photos of the makeshift basketball court his crew had crafted from scrap. The last message was different. Audio only. Static crackled, overlaid with panicked shouts and the roar of fire. We're burning. We're burning. They're not even Jesus. They're not even talking. Tuvok, if you get this, tell Mom. And then silence. Stayed with Tuvok, a jagged wound buried in his chest for 23 years. He rose quickly after that, diving headfirst into black projects, signing off on things that most wouldn't dare to whisper about. He became the kind of man who didn't flinch when an empire fell, because the universe had taught him a brutal truth. You either become the monster, or you're devoured by one. So Earth became the monster. Onboard WSO-7, the aftermath of Traven, unfolded with disconcerting tranquility. The ship's AI, Vigilant, streamed tactical updates directly into Tuvok's neural interface, eliminating the need for physical commands. Every facet of the warship, from its hull drones to the planet-cracking rupture cannons, was an extension of him. Tuvok was the ship. In every way that mattered except for flesh, the galaxy couldn't fathom the depths of Earth's vengeance. WSO-7 was but one of 13 world ships, each a masterpiece of destruction, wielding a unique principle of annihilation. Some harnessed gravitational collapse, others singularity cannons or entropy fields. WSO-9, stationed above Del Sarai's sun, is a solar igniter, a weapon capable of destabilizing stellar cores, turning stars into novas, and wiping out entire systems in one calculated strike. Earth had plundered the technologies of every empire that dared cross it. Biological weaponry from the Throshery, temporal manipulation from the Ikari, and emotional interference systems from the Diran, designed to flood entire armies with despair, guilt, or confusion. Humanity didn't just learn from its adversaries, it eclipsed them. On the command deck, Tuvok's second-in-command Rendell stepped in, gruff-sharped and unyieldingly loyal. He had once been a weapons engineer. After his family was obliterated in the Dravik raids, Earth hadn't saved him. It had given him purpose. They're panicking, Rendell said, handing Tuvok a holographic feed. Council fleets are retreating from 5 sectors. Zorith are requesting peace talks. The Goni are abandoning border colonies. Tuvok grunted, his expression cold. Let them run. They'll find no sanctuary. Asked ChatGPT. Rendell hesitated. You sure you want to hit Del Sarai next? Their citizens supported Earth. There were protests. Dissidents. Tuvok's gaze cut through him, cold as an ice field devoid of thaw. Their government voted for the embargo. Their leaders applauded when the Trinarian sanctions strangled our medical colonies. 10,000 children died for their political gain. He paused, his voice a blade slicing through the quiet. They're next. Silence thickened between them. Finally, Rendell nodded, understood. They both knew this step was irreversible. This wasn't war, it was annihilation. Humanity wasn't engaging in galactic politics anymore, it was delivering a message. carved into the stars through system-wide extinction. Never touch Earth again. Yet Tuvok wasn't just a machine. Beneath the steel resolve and measured silence lay fragments of a man. At night, those fragments surfaced memories of old Earth sunsets, of racing battered bikes with Ryan through crumbling suburbs, of laughter before the galaxy turned cold. He'd never told anyone, but before every strike, Tuvok played Ryan's last message. Not to dwell on guilt, but to sharpen his focus. That night, as WSO-9 prepared for ignition, Tuvok stood alone in his quarters. Neural sync offline, he closed his eyes. The silence enveloped him, and within it, the familiar echo returned. They're not even talking. Tuvok, if you get this, his jaw tightened, not against pain, but against peace. Peace wasn't ready to return not until the last empire. That had savored joy from Earth's torment begged for oblivion. Solar ignition parameters optimal. Delcerai's star will reach critical phase within 31.2 minutes of detonation, Vigilant reported. Evacuation warnings? Tuvok asked. None. We remain undetected. Tuvok exhaled, then issued the command. A burst of encrypted data surged through hyperspace, threading the void between war worlds like a whisper through silk. In a distant system, what appeared to be a dormant asteroid unfolded, revealing spines that extended with mechanical precision. Energy spikes hummed to life, and a spear of modified dark matter pierced the heart of Delcerai's star. The sun trembled and began to wail. Across the system, watchers scrambled as the star's light faltered. Gravitational waves threw satellites from orbit, and the once golden sky shifted first to a sickly blue, then crimson, and finally an oppressive black. Then it shattered. One sun, 6 planets, 12 billion lives, gone. When the reports reached the Galactic Council, there were no debates, no emergency sessions. The Council fractured under the weight of its terror. A dozen member worlds demanded immediate secession from Council jurisdiction, while others turned inward, cocooning themselves in primitive defense networks. But it was futile, because by then, the question was no longer how many ships has Earth built. It was how many remain, and who's next. Tuvok stood on the bridge of WSO-9, watching as the star erupted in a plume of cosmic fire that consumed the system. He neither smiled nor cursed. He simply whispered, 2 down. And the darkness seemed to whisper back, 11 to go. The galaxy began to splinter. Delcerai's obliteration didn't merely annihilate a system, dismantled an empire's illusion of invincibility. The Galactic Council, once a monument of bureaucratic dominance, military strength, and political scheming, now resembled a wounded beast. Thrashing in its death throes, humanity had abandoned galactic politics. It wasn't negotiating anymore. Instead, it was delivering a message etched across entire systems in extinction: never touch Earth again. But Tuvok wasn't a machine. Beneath the steel resolve and deafening silence lay remnants of the man he had once been. Sometimes at night, fragments would rise to the surface, memories of old Earth sunsets, of pedaling battered bikes alongside Ryan through the wreckage of ruined suburbs, of laughter before the cold swallowed everything no one knew but before. Every strike, Tuvok replayed Ryan's last message. Not for guilt, he had long since shed that, but for focus. It grounded him, sharpening his resolve. That night, as WSO-9's ignition sequence initiated, Tuvok stood alone in his quarters. Neural sync disengaged, his eyes closed. He embraced the silence. And in that void, the echo returned. They're not even talking. Tuvok, if you get this, his jaw tightened. Not to suppress pain, but to keep peace at bay. The universe wasn't ready for peace. Not yet, until the final empire that had savored Earth's suffering begged for the void. When Tuvok returned to the bridge, the countdown had already begun. WSO-9 standing by, Vigilant announced. Solar ignition parameters optimal. Delcerai's star will reach critical phase within 31.2 minutes of detonation. Evacuation warnings? Tuvok asked. None. We remain undetected. Tuvok inhaled deeply, steadying himself. Then he gave the command. A pulse of encrypted data surged through hyperspace, threading the vast gap between war worlds like a blade through velvet. In a distant system, a dormant asteroid came alive. Mechanical spines unfolded, energy spikes flared, and a spear of modified dark matter pierced the core of Delcerai's star. The sun shuddered in, then it screamed. Across the system, chaos erupted. The star's light flickered. Gravitational waves tossed satellites from orbit. The skies shifted in a sickening sequence. Gold to blue, blue to red, red to black. Then came the final act. The star detonated. When the reports reached the Galactic Council, there were no debates, no emergency sessions. Instead, the Council unraveled. A dozen worlds demanded immediate secession from Council oversight, while others turned inward, cloaking themselves in rudimentary defense grids. But it made no difference. By then, the galaxy was no longer asking how many ships has Earth built. The only question left was, how many remain, and who's next? Tuvok stood on the bridge of WSO-9, watching the star's final eruption, a plume of cosmic fire consuming everything in its wake. He didn't smile, nor did he curse. He only whispered, to down. And in the void, the darkness whispered, back 11 to go. Delcerai's obliteration didn't just destroy a system, it fractured the galaxy. The illusion of control that the Galactic Council had wielded for centuries disintegrated. What had once been an imposing monolith of bureaucracy, military power, and political manipulation now floundered like a wounded beast. Its members abandoned their fortified citadel above Sirian Prime, retreating to undisclosed locations, communicating only through encrypted bursts. Half of them didn't respond at all. Others sent frantic messages into the void, desperately seeking allies, sanctuaries, or salvation. But salvation didn't come. What came instead was a single transmission, repeated endlessly across every frequency, penetrating every shield and firewall. Earth remembers. Earth repays. Tuvok had those words carved into the steel above the War Council chamber of WSO-7, not as a holographic banner, not as a polished digital display, but crudely burned into the metal with a plasma torch. It was raw, unyielding, a reminder. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the Council wasn't at war with another alien empire. It was at war with an idea. An idea that a species could rise from the ashes without permission and strike back with such ferocity that even the stars seemed to mourn. But Tuvok knew better than to think the path ahead would be one of unchecked dominance. The galaxy was vast, and with Earth's firestorm spreading, unseen forces began to stir. Trouble was brewing. Ask ChatGPT. Not from without, but from within. WSO-3 Iron Will had gone silent. It wasn't the result of an enemy attack. No fleet, no weapon known to the galaxy could harm a world ship. If any alien had dared, they'd have been reduced to stardust. Before they breached its outer defenses. No, this silence was internal, a mutiny. They called themselves the Sanctionist Human-Born. Earth-raised officers and crew who believed Tuvok had crossed an unforgivable line. To them, the annihilation of billions, no matter the justification, made Earth no better than its oppressors. They spoke of restraint, diplomacy, of halting the destruction once fear had accomplished its task. Fools. Tuvok had anticipated fractures. These were people born after the Purge, raised in the safety of Earth's underground rebirth, sheltered from the cold bite of true loss. To them, the galaxy's agony was abstract, a hypothetical wound. To Tuvok, it was blood spilled on the ground, bones scattered in ash, and the echo of screams swallowed by silence. In the gravity chamber, he stood alone, watching a simulation of Earthlight 7's final hours. He hadn't commissioned it for remembrance, but for clarity. Over and over, digital fire consumed the cities. Civilians screamed. Children ran through a haze of smoke, faces twisted in terror. Then, as always, silence. Rendell entered, his expression grim. WSO-3 has formally broken command protocol. They've disabled their quantum receivers. No uplink, no coordination. Tuvok didn't turn. How many support them? Rough estimate. A third of the crew. Led by Commander Kellen. Tuvok's voice darkened. Kellen. Camed him myself. Rendell gave a terse nod. They're calling for a ceasefire. They want strength without genocide. They say you've become the very tyrant Earth swore to destroy. Finally, Tuvok turned. His face was unyielding, carved from stone. They didn't live at Rendell. They read it in files and bedtime stories. He paused, his gaze distant. I want contact reestablished. If they refuse, you'll strike one of our own, Rendell asked, his voice weighted with the implications. Tuvok's eyes moved to the stars beyond the observation glass. His voice was cold, resolute. If Earth hesitates now, even once, the entire galaxy will turn on us. They fear us because we've become unpredictable, because we do what they ask ChatGPT. Never believed possible, Rendell finished, his silence saying more than any protest could. Aboard Iron Will WSO-3 Commander, Kellen stood before his own war council. The chamber reflected a different vision of Earth's future. Smooth, polished walls, a sleeker, more diplomatic design. It mirrored the mindset of the ship's crew thinkers, scientists, and hybrids of military and diplomacy. They were the generation born during the planning of the world's ships, not the fire that demanded their creation. We can't keep doing this, Kellen said, standing resolute before his officers. Delsarai wasn't an enemy world. Yes, their leader supported the sanctions, but billions of innocent civilians lived there. Do you really think they all voted for that? That every child in that system deserved to die in a starburst? A younger officer, barely 25, broke the tense silence. If we stop now, won't that show weakness? Won't the council retaliate? The second they think we're backing down, Kellen nodded, his tone measured. That's the balance we need. Strength, but with principle. Tuvok is turning Earth's name into a curse, whispered in terror. That's not leadership. A war machine on autopilot. The room remained divided, tension crackling in the air. Fear, loyalty, and vengeance clashed in silence. But Kellen was steady, his conviction unshakable. We take WSO-3 to the edge of neutral space, he continued. We send a message not to the Council, but to Earth. A demand to end this campaign, to open diplomacy under the shadow of our strength.
And
if Tuvok says no? Another officer asked cautiously. Kellen's jaw tightened. Then we show him that Earth's future doesn't belong to his ghosts. Back on merciless WSO-7 Tuvok watched the feed from WSO-3. Kellen's ship loitered in the Omega Drift, broadcasting calls for peace and pleading with the fragmented remnants of the Council to convene for a summit. It wasn't betrayal, it was idiocy. Tuvok had once thought of Kellen as a son. Now, he saw him for what he truly was, a weak link. Prepare WS-12, Tuvok ordered. Rendell blinked, visibly caught off guard. 12. The Forge. WS-12 was Earth's newest world ship, still undergoing field testing. Its weapon wasn't one of physical destruction, but biological annihilation. It carried the genoblide virus designed not to kill, but to rewrite. It dismantled neural pathways in alien species, erasing identity, culture, and history. Entire civilizations would collapse. Their people rendered as blank slates. A planetary mind dash wipe. Use it, Tuvok said, his voice like steel. He didn't want to, but the galaxy needed to understand. Earth couldn't deal with a rogue world. Ship. It was nothing, Rendell, he said quietly. Contact Kellen. Tell him he has one chance, one opportunity to stand down. If he refuses. Tuvok's gaze drifted to the stars. His voice was colder than the void. Then we erased the mutiny mind, memory, and name. While Tuvok maneuvered his intricate web of control and fear, something else stirred in the ruins of Delsarai. Not all of its people had perished. A handful of military vessels had fled before the ignition, scattered and disoriented, but far from broken. Among the survivors was Commander Eris, shielded deep within a gas giant during the explosion. She had watched everything her son, her family, her world die in a silent cascade of fire and destruction. She blamed Tuvok for their annihilation, but she also cursed her own leaders for their complicity. Now, grief was giving way to purpose. Eris wasn't going to plead for aid from the fractured council. She wouldn't waste time crying for justice. She would do what no one else had dared hunt, the Warmaker himself. Earth believed it was untouchable. But vengeance was universal. Sometimes all it took was a single ember from a burned world to ignite an inferno. Kellen stood alone in the observation, as a chamber of iron-willed WSO3, staring into the quiet expanse of the Omega Drift. The stars here were muted, as though the galaxy itself held its breath. His hands were clasped behind his back, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed the storm inside him. He knew Tuvok would come, not with words nor reason, but with overwhelming force. Tuvok didn't just crush empires, he obliterated hesitation. Message Kellen had sent to Earth wasn't a declaration of rebellion. To him, it was a plea, a call for balance, a desperate reminder of humanity's soul before it was lost entirely. But in Tuvok's eyes, it was likely treason, weakness. Kellen had once idolized the man. In the beginning, Tuvok had been a symbol of defiance, a survivor who turned pain into unbreakable resolve. But now, Tuvok had become something else. Entirely a force of destruction without pause, a machine that erased anything that didn't conform. Behind him, Lieutenant Merrill entered. The chamber. "They're comin'! How many?" Kellen asked, his voice steady. "WS-12, for sure." No escorts visible yet, but likely more hidden in the veil. Kellen exhaled heavily. He sent the forge. Merrill didn't respond. She didn't need. 2. The implications were clear. WS-12 was a prototype, still untested in full-scale combat. Deploying it now could only mean one thing. Tuvok wasn't coming to negotiate, was coming to dismantle them. "Arm the interceptors," Kellen ordered, his tone sharper now. "What, prep our pulse shields. No one fires unless fired upon." Merrill hesitated. "Do you think he'll talk?" Kellen's expression darkened. "No," he admitted bitterly. "But I have to believe his crew still might." Across the void aboard WS-12, the forged Tuvok stood within the tactical core. The dim glow of crimson data streams bathed his face, reflecting the grim purpose that defined him. The ship was different. Its walls pulsed faintly, an eerie blend of biotech and synthetic command threads. Integrated with the Genoblite, WS-12 was Earth's most terrifying weapon, a virus capable of unraveling civilizations. It didn't kill. It rewired. It stripped away identity, culture, and memory, leaving nothing but blank slates where entire societies once thrived. WS-12 felt alive in a way no weapon should. Its faintly pulsing walls seemed to breathe, an unsettling blend of organic and mechanical intent. Even Rendell, seasoned as he was, looked visibly disturbed. "You're really going to deploy it?" Rendell asked. Tuvok's response was as cold as the void. "If Kellen refuses to fall in line, then yes. There's still a way to bring him back." He's not coming back," Tuvok snapped, his voice sharp with finality. He made his choice the moment he let his conscience speak louder than command. Rendell hesitated, his gaze searching. "You trained him. You trusted him. And that's exactly why this hurts," Tuvok said, turning to face the glowing terminal.
"Albert."
"It's also why I won't hesitate." Before him, a dark sphere rotated within its stasis shell, the Genoblite a silent harbinger of oblivion. Invisible to most sensors, it didn't kill. It erased. Neural pathways rewritten, memories obliterated, entire identities dissolved. And his crew wouldn't die, they'd become blank slates. Nameless and drifting, alive but utterly hollow. Tuvok's voice was steady, unyielding. "Contact WSO-3. Last warning." On the bridge of Ironwill, WSO-3 Kellen stood amidst the crackle of cums as Tuvok's voice filled the chamber. "You brought the forge," Kellen said evenly. Tuvok's reply carried the weight of inevitability. "You are in violation of command protocol. You've broadcast unauthorized messages to enemy channels, broken formation, and gone dark for 72 hours. You are hereby considered compromised." "I'm not compromised," Kellen countered. His tone was calm but firm. "I'm conscious. You've killed nearly 20 billion people across 3 systems. You've become exactly what they feared worse than what they ever were." Tuvok paused, the silence heavier than any words. Then he spoke, his voice devoid of warmth. "Stand down. Return to Earth Fleet coordination, or you'll be nullified." Kellen's eyes narrowed. Nullified. "These are human lives, Tuvok." No, Tuvok replied coldly. "These are ghosts. Hollow men clinging to ideals that died with Earthlight 7. The world you want back doesn't exist. Only survival does." The channel cut. Kellen stared at the console in silence. Behind him, Meryl's face was pale. "What do we do?" "Shh," asked, her voice trembling. Kellen turned to his officers. "Ready our quantum scramblers? If he deploys the virus, we scatter. I'd rather vanish into exile than become a shell of myself." A younger technician looked up from her station. "Incoming spike. WS-12 is arming the payload." Kellen's jaw tightened. So it's come to this. Shields up across all decks. Prepare for electromagnetic fallback. Then, something unexpected happened. In the shadowy expanse beyond the two ships, a new signal flared. Unknown. A vessel decloaked, its form immense and unfamiliar. It wasn't Council, wasn't Earth Fleet, and it wasn't small. Alarms flared across the command bridge of WS-03 as sensors lit up in warning. "Unknown vessel approaching," the technician called out. "Massive displacement. Unknown energy signature." They were cloaked until now. Meryl squinted at the readings. "It's not Tuvok and it's not us. Who the hell is that?" Kellen's face hardened. "We're about to find out." The comms crackled to life, and a voice came through, cold, measured, and female. "This is Commander Eris of the Delsarai Sovereign Remnant. You killed my world. Now I end yours." And with those words, the battlefield shifted. Aboard the Ashwaker, Eris stood at the center of her cobbled-together juggernaut. The ship was a Frankenstein's monster of desperation and ingenuity. Pieced together from Delsarai escape vessels, outlaw tech, black market singularity drives, and raw determination. It wasn't a world ship, but it was a predator all its own. She had spent months in hiding, rebuilding, watching. When she saw Tavok's fleet turn against itself, she knew it was time. She didn't just see a target, she saw opportunity. "You built your monsters, Earth," she whispered, "but you didn't see the ones you created in us." Eris struck first not at Tuvok, but at Kellen. She didn't care who he was or what he represented. She only cared about making Earth bleed from within. Let them destroy each other. Let them tear themselves apart while she stoked the fire. WS-03 rocked violently as the first barrage hit. "They're attacking us," a lieutenant shouted. "It's not Tuvok, it's Delsarai," Kellen cursed. "Open hails. Tell them we're not part of Tuvok's strikes." We stood down. No response. Meryl said grimly. Another barrage slammed into their hull, venting. The ship's left armory into space. "Their jamming comes." "All shields forward," Kellen barked. "We'll deal with Tuvok later." But what Kellen didn't realize was that Eris had already done what the Galactic Council never could. She had made Earth fight itself, aboard WS-12. Tuvok watched the chaos unfold. Kellen's ship was taking heavy fire from the unexpected third party. The Forge's targeting systems were already calculating trajectories for its Genoblite payload. Part of Tuvok felt satisfaction. Let the traitors burn. But another part of him, a deeply buried fragment of the man he used to be, hesitated. "Sir," Rendell said, breaking his thoughts. "We're picking up escape pods." Tuvok's gaze snapped to him. "From where?" WS-03, Rendell replied. "Civilians, cadets, medical staff. They're abandoning ship." Kellen didn't shield them in time. Tuvok's eyes narrowed. As the faint flicker of something human stirred inside him, "Pull back the forge," he ordered. Rendell blinked in disbelief. "What?" "Pull it back," Tuvok repeated, his tone sharp. "The Delsarai want blood? Let them take it from someone? Else you're sparing Kellen?" Rendell pressed. "No," Tuvok said, his voice cold and deliberate. "I'm letting him see what mercy costs." He turned toward the main viewport. "Rescue the pods, only the pods. WS-03 is on its own." And so, in the firestorm of betrayal, vengeance, and ideology, Three factions spiraled into chaos. Tuvok, the warlord, struggling to control the monster he had forged. Kellen, the idealist, fighting to preserve the last fragments of humanity's soul. And Eris, the survivor, turning Earth's arrogance into its greatest weakness. The stars had never known such silence or such rage. WSO-3 drifted aimlessly, plasma venting from its ruptured dorsal flank. Fires raged unchecked in sections where automated systems had failed, and life support clung to fragile threads. A third of the crew was dead or missing, the rest caught between frantic efforts to stabilize the ship or paralyzed by the betrayal of an enemy they had never suspected. Eris's attack hadn't been strategic. It had been raw vengeance, hammer swung not to wound, but to obliterate. She didn't want prisoners. She wanted ashes. Kellen slumped in the secondary command chair, half his face streaked with soot and blood. Meryl stood next to him, visibly shaken, clutching a handheld terminal. "We've lost external sensors." "Mainframes are unresponsive," Meryl said, her voice unsteady. "How many casualties?" Kellen rasped. "Too many," she replied grimly. "The escape pods made it, though." She hesitated. Tuvok pulled them in. Kellen froze. "He what?" Meryl nodded. "He didn't fire on us. Held back the forge. Let the Delsarai hit us, and then rescued our pods." Kellen blinked through the haze of pain. No speech, no mercy mission, nothing. Just watched, cold as ever. That made it worse somehow. Tuvok didn't need to fire a weapon to destroy someone sometimes. He let the universe do the killing. Let it gnaw at you. Let you realize what mercy costs. And then he stood by, watching it all fall apart. Aboard WS-12. Tuvok observed the survivors from WSO-3 through the observation glass. They were young, frightened, some injured, most utterly lost. They didn't understand why their own kind had turned against them. Tuvok didn't address them. He simply watched. Rendell approached, holding a datapad. "They're clean. No connections to the mutiny. Mostly medics, junior techs, a few cadets. No sign of Kellen." Tuvok nodded slowly. "Let them recover. Sign them quarters on Deck 14. You're not sending them back?" Rendell asked. Tuvok's jaw clenched. "There's nothing to send them back to." He turned his gaze back to the stars, searching for answers they refused to give. "He wanted Earth to be better," Tuvok muttered. "Didn't realize the galaxy only respects fire. The galaxy was fracturing." Tuvok, once the vanguard of Earth's vengeance, now walked a razor-thin line between strategic terror and total collapse. The warships, though formidable, were not invincible. Their strength relied on fear, the illusion of unity, but WSO-3's defection and the emergence of rogue elements like Eris had shattered that illusion. It signaled to the galaxy that Earth wasn't a singular, unstoppable force. It was divided, and in division, even titans could bleed. Elsewhere. Yes. Eris sat in the dimly lit command chair of the Ashwaker, her face shadowed by the flickering light of malfunctioning consoles. Her ship, though monstrous, was patchwork straining. Under the weight of its own defiance, she didn't care. Every scar on the hull, every error code flashing on her displays was a testament to the vengeance she was crafting. She wasn't done yet. Aris stood aboard the Ashwaker, her fingers trembling, her jaw set tight. They had done it. They had struck Earth or at least one of its monstrous arms. Around her, the remnants of Delorai's defense fleet sat in stunned silence. They had expected death, martyrdom, annihilation. Instead, they had survived. And now there was blood in the water. "Status," Urs demanded, her voice cutting through the haze. An officer replied cautiously, "We did damage. WSO-3 is still operational, but crippled." Their escape pods were intercepted by another Earth warship. Eris clenched her fists. "Let them rescue their traitors." "We made our point." Another officer hesitated. "Ma'am, what if they retaliate?" "Then we give them more of what they're not ready for," she snapped, standing tall, eyes burning with intent. "We're not just survivors, we're evolution. Earth turned itself into a monster. Fine, let's become the poison they never see coming." For Eris, This wasn't a single battle. This was the start of recruitment. Across the galaxy, dozens of species still hated Earth, still feared Tuvok, still remembered the fires of Trevin and Delarai. Eris would find them, unite them, give them something they hadn't had in years, a target they believed they could strike. Tuvok had overplayed his hand. And when you build weapons that burn entire systems, everyone eventually wants a match. Back. On WSO-7, Tuvok returned from the refugee deck to the command chamber. He hadn't spoken to Kellen directly. He didn't need to. Kellen would understand. Letting WSO-3 live was the loudest message Tuvok could have sent. And yet, something gnawed at him. For 23 years, Tuvok had lived by two truths. Earth had been hunted, and only overwhelming power could prevent another purge. But now, staring out at the stars, blinking coldly back at him, another truth began to form. He had no exit strategy, no plan for peace, no path to reconciliation, only more war or destruction. And that realization, no matter how deeply he buried, it began to rot in the back of his mind, vigilant. Tuvok called out to WSO-7's AI. Awaiting command, the AI replied. Status of Council communications. Dormant, Vigilant answered. Encrypted pings continue across relay networks. Most factions remain in disarray. However, there is new chatter from the outer fringe. What kind of chatter? Tuvok asked, narrowing his eyes. Unregistered ships, nomadic fleets. Unity among scattered remnants. Tuvok's gaze darkened. Eris, possible, the AI responded. Send a ghost ping. Observe only. If she's building alliances, we'll know. Understood, Vigilant replied. Tuvok exhaled slowly. He wasn't ready for a second front, but he would be. Kellen lay in the medbay of WSO-3, ribs cracked, arm burned, exhaustion heavy on his frame. Meryl sat beside him, her face tight. With worry? Orders, she asked softly. Kellen closed his eyes, his voice barely audible. Send a transmission to Tuvok. No protest, no justification, just this. We stood for something, and that's why we survived. Meryl hesitated. Do you think he'll understand? No, Kellen whispered, but maybe someone else will. In the outskirts of the Vega expanse, Galactic Council remnant intercepted a strange signal, encrypted, ancient. It carried a single phrase in a dead language they hadn't seen in centuries. Earth remembers, but beneath it, something new emerged. Earth is not alone anymore. The Vega expanse had once been a graveyard empty. Systems abandoned by civilizations deemed too weak to matter. Now it was waking up. Eris stood in the center of a massive orbital hangar, cobbled together from wreckage and stolen tech. Behind her, the Ashwaker loomed, a predator at rest. Before her stood delegates from 12 shattered worlds' warlords, insurgents, defectors, and survivors. They weren't diplomats. They were fighters. The kind of people who would watch their homes vanish under Earth's war doctrine. They didn't trust each other. They hated Tuvok more. Aris raised a hand, silencing the murmurs. You've all seen what Earth has become, she began. You watched Trevin fall. You saw Delarai's son die.
Ow.
Some of you were Council sympathizers.
Ow.
Others were rebels before Earth even lifted its first warship. She paused, her voice sharpening to a blade. Aris stepped forward, her voice sharp.
And cold? You think Tuvok is invincible? He's not. I crippled one of his warships with half the weapons in this room. And the rest? They're divided. Earth is no longer united, it's tearing itself apart. A grizzled Thorn warlord snarled, his voice dripping with skepticism. Even divided, they could erase this system in seconds. They could, Aris admitted. But they won't. Why not? Someone demanded. She smiled, a cold edge cutting through the room, because they've lost the why. She stepped back and activated a hollow feed. The projection filled the chamber, showing the survivors of WSO-3, the ones Tuvok had rescued. Their faces were young, human, and frightened. Their disillusionment was written in every downturned gaze and hesitant movement. They hadn't fought back. They hadn't retaliated. They were spared, Eris said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. Not out of mercy, but out of uncertainty. She turned, her eyes sweeping the room. Earth's greatest weapon isn't its warships. It's Tuvok. But Tuvok is alone. The room buzzed with unease. A voice whispered in the tense air, "Then we don't fight Earth. We fight him." "Exactly," Eris replied, her tone resolute. And just like that, a coalition was born not of heroes, but of monsters bound by a common enemy. Tuvok stood in WSO-7's central chamber, the tactical board alive with encrypted feeds. His network of ghost satellites had intercepted the first concrete signs of coordinated resistance. Multiple species. Unified protocols. One name repeated over and over: Eris. He leaned forward, his face unreadable, his mind a storm. Rendell entered quietly, his footsteps hesitant. "You saw it?" "Yes," Tuvok murmured. "She's forming something. A movement. She's smart," he added after a pause. "She's not attacking directly. She's turning others against us, against me." Rendell moved closer. "We still have overwhelming force. Force doesn't matter if fear fades." Tuvok's voice was quiet, but heavy with understanding. This moment had always loomed on the horizon. Every empire in history overplayed its hand. Tuvok had gambled that fear alone could keep Earth safe. But now, fear was thinning. Doubt was spreading like cracks in battle-worn holes. Even his own crew wasn't immune. He had caught the whispers, officers exchanging uneasy glances, crew members questioning the silence from Earth Command. Not all of Earth's leadership had survived the Great Retreat underground, and those who had were fractured. Hidden in bunkers, they argued about Tuvok's methods. Some still called him a savior. Others whispered a far more dangerous word: liability. WSO-3 drifted in orbit above a dead moon, undergoing emergency repairs. The crew had managed to patch the worst of the damage. Kellen was back on his feet, though he leaned heavily on a cane, his fractured hip healing slowly. The scars from Aris's assault ran far deeper than flesh. The ship's internal monitors flickered to life, bringing footage from hidden channels. What they saw shocked them. Aris's speech in the Vega expanse. It had gone viral, not just in alien networks, but in the clandestine corners of Earth's own fleet. In the footage, Aris stood tall and unbroken, speaking to the remnants of shattered worlds. Her voice carried the fire of righteous fury and unrelenting purpose. The phrase that echoed across intercepted channels was simple, yet damning. "Tuvok is not Earth." Kellen stared at the screen, silent. Nearby, Mariel scanned messages from Council remnants, her brow furrowed. "They're organizing around her," she said, breaking the tension. "She did what we didn't," Kellen replied, his voice heavy. "She made people believe." Mariel gave him a pointed look. "They're already calling you the Ghost Commander, the one who stood up to Tuvok and lived." Kellen chuckled weakly, shaking his head. "That's generous. I didn't stand up. I got wrecked. But you refused to kill." His faint smile vanished. "I didn't refuse because of mercy. I refused because someone has to remember what we were." He shifted, standing slowly, his cane supporting him. The pain was manageable, but the weight of his thoughts was not. "Record a message," he said. "To who?" Mariel asked, uncertain. "To Earth. To the galaxy." The transmission spread like wildfire. Kellen stood in his torn officer's coat, face bruised but voice unwavering. He didn't plead for peace. He didn't apologize. His words were simple yet searing. Asterisk, asterisk, we were supposed to be better. We rose from ruin not to burn others, but to protect ourselves. Somewhere along the way, we forgot that difference. I fought with Tuvok. I believed in him. He saved us from extinction. But now he's writing our extinction into the stars one world at a time. Earth is not one man. We're not warships. We're not fear. If Tuvok hears this, I say this as someone who once followed him without question. Stand down. Let us rebuild. We'll burn away everything you swore to protect. Asterisk, asterisk. The message was short, but its weight was undeniable. Tuvok saw it. He watched it twice, his expression unreadable. When it ended, he turned off the screen. Behind him, Rendell waited. "It's become a symbol," Rendell said cautiously. Tuvok nodded, his gaze fixed on nothing. "He's become a problem. You could kill him." "I could," Tuvok admitted. "Then why don't you?" Tuvok turned slowly, his voice heavier than Rendell had ever heard it. "Because if I kill him now, I prove him right." In the cold expanse of uncharted space, Eris watched the message too. Her war council argued in heated tones. "He's weak." One spat. "No," another countered. "He's leverage. Too soft to survive, but too important to ignore." Eris raised a hand, silencing them. "Let him speak," she commanded. They hesitated but fell silent, their gazes turning toward her. "He's not our enemy," she said with quiet conviction. Confusion rippled through the room. "Then what is he?" someone asked. Eris turned, her expression sharp, yet almost hopeful. "He's the bridge between Tuvok and the end of Earth's control. Deep beneath Earth's crust, in fortified bunkers hidden from even Tuvok's surveillance. The remnants of Earth's true leadership gathered in emergency session. Scientists, strategists, shadow politicians, those who had shaped Earth's rise from the shadows, debated furiously. At the center of the room, a man stood silent, gaunt with age and burden. His name had not been spoken aloud in a decade, but when he finally spoke, the room fell silent. He gestured to the broadcast replaying on a central screen. Kellen's voice echoed faintly. "Let us rebuild." The old man turned to his council, his voice calm but commanding. "Recall Tuvok," and the future began to bend. The recall message arrived through a forgotten protocol, one Tuvok hadn't. Seen in 15 years, was buried deep within the neural systems of WSO-7, accessible only through a private encryption key known to a dozen people on Earth, 11 of whom were supposed to be dead. But one survived. The voice. Low and precise, cut. Through Tuvok's command, console like a ghost, dragging its nails across his brainstem. Tuvok stared at the screen, unmoving, unblinking. The seal on the transmission, a triple helix spiral, confirmed its authenticity. This wasn't from Earth's puppet generals or showboat governments. This was from the hidden architects of Earth's resurgence. Someone above him had resurfaced. Someone who still had the authority to pull the plug. Behind him, Rendell watched the screen flicker. "They're recalling you," he said. Tuvok's voice was ice. "They're daring me. You'll disobey." Rendell asked softly. Tuvok turned. Away, his fists clenched. "I gave them 23 years of loyalty. I saved them from extinction. When the council came for our blood, they hid. I fought. I built the only thing that kept Earth alive." Rendell didn't argue. The silence between them spoke louder than words. Finally, Tuvok's voice broke through. "I'll return," he said, his tone sharp. "But on my terms." On WSO-3, the crew watched Earth's recall order as if it were divine intervention. Some cheered. Others remained cautious. Kellen didn't cheer at all. He sat in the auxiliary chamber, staring at the replay of the message. Ariel stood beside him, watching his expression. "He's going back," she said, her voice uncertain. "Maybe they'll lock him up, and maybe they'll strip the warships." Kellen didn't respond immediately. His gaze remained fixed ahead. "You don't believe it?" Mariel asked. Kellen exhaled slowly. "I believe in politics," he said, "and I believe they'll leash him for now. But Tuvok isn't a soldier anymore. He's a belief, a momentum." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "And momentum doesn't stop just because someone tells it to." Rising, he turned to Mariel. "We're leaving orbit." Her eyes widened. "Where to?" "Vega Expanse," he said simply. "To Eris." Mariel stiffened. "You think she'll listen?" "No," Kellen admitted. "But she's winning. And if we don't stand between her and what comes next, she'll burn Earth down just to feel even." He paused, his gaze heavy. "And I won't let humanity become a warning." Eris stood in her chamber, watching the fleets arrive. What had begun as a scattered resistance was now a mobile armada. 37 ships, representing 6 species, hung in the void. Some were old council destroyers, others cobbled together. From scrap, barely spived, they shared one thing: hatred, not just for Earth, but for Tavakanad, for everything he represented. Her tech officer approached, datapad in hand. WSO-3 has left lunar orbit, he said. They're heading for this. Eris nodded. Let him. He's not Tavok. The officer hesitated. You think Kellen will fight? No, Eris replied, her voice steady. I think he'll try to stop us. The officer tilted his head. From what? Riss turned to the viewport, gazing. Out at the scattered stars. Her tone dropped to a whisper. Tavok docked WSO-7 in high Earth orbit, its massive frame flanked by 3 silent escort drones. No grand ceremony awaited him, no parade or fanfare, only silence. He exited the airlock alone, his boots echoing against the metal deck. There was no security detail to meet him, only one figure. An old man, bald and gaunt, his eyes sunken with age and burden. Director Haver. Once, he had been the chief of Earth's strategic command, a name spoken in whispers among Earth's inner circle. Now a myth in the shadowed halls of power. You're late, Havro said, his voice dry. You're alive, Tavok replied, his tone sharp. Havar allowed a faint, ghostly smile. Without another word, he turned, and Tavok followed him through the sterile corridors of the old command compound, deep beneath Greenland's ice shelf. This place, untouched since the collapse, was where Earth's most secret decisions had been made, long before the Galactic Council had even known Earth had reawakened. They walked in silence until they reached the heart of the compound, the command chamber. The walls flickered with the light of satellite feeds, broadcasting galactic chaos. The war Tavok had ignited was no longer confined. It had spread like wildfire. You burned too much, Haver said finally, his voice carrying the weight of decades. I made Earth safe, Tavok snapped. Haver's expression remained calm. You made us a target. I made us untouchable. Havar turned to him, his tone razor sharp. You made yourself a god. His eyes bore into Tavok, and now your worshippers are leaving. Tavok's jaw tightened as he turned away. Havar continued, unyielding. Ares is no longer just a threat, a figurehead. Your enemies now have structure. Kellen gave them conscience. Ares gave them fire. Tavok's fists clenched. And what does Earth want? Haver's voice dropped to a low growl. We want peace. Tavok scoffed. There's no peace with ghosts. Havar stepped closer, his tone cutting through like steel. There's no future with you. The words hit Tavok harder than any fleet blast. Didn't respond. Instead, he turned and walked away, his steps heavy, as if he carried the weight of the galaxy itself. In the Vega expanse, WSO-3 arrived near the Coalition fleet. The standoff was immediate. No shots were fired, but every cannon from the Coalition's ships was aimed squarely at the Earth vessel. Kellen boarded a neutral ship under a fragile truce. Ares awaited him there.
Hi.
The room was stark, empty, but for 2 chairs and a single table. Neither had brought guards. It was just the 2 of them, 2 leaders who, by all rights, should have been enemies. Eris studied Kellen like he was a broken weapon, her gaze piercing. You're not like him, she said finally, her voice cold but curious. We're not a monster, Kellen replied. Her lips twitched, not quite a smile. Don't mistake restraint for weakness. I don't, Kellen said firmly. He leaned forward, his gaze steady. That's why I'm here, asked ChatGPT. The galaxy moved forward, not in unity, but in understanding. A fragile equilibrium born from fire and tempered by restraint, Kellen became a symbol, though he never sought it. His name was whispered in war rooms and spoken aloud in debates. A reminder of what it meant to stand firm without losing one's humanity. He retired quietly to a distant moon, leaving the politics and scars of war behind. Content to watch the stars in peace, Eris led the Coalition for years. Not as a conqueror, but as a steward, ensuring that no one power could rise unchecked again. She carried her pain, but wielded it wisely, her leadership a testament to the resilience born of loss. And Tavok had vanished, as if he had never been. Some said he wandered the edges of known space, watching from afar as the galaxy he had shaped moved on without him. Others believed he sought a place where the stars were still silent, where he could finally rest. But in the annals of history, his name endured a shadow and a lesson, a reminder that the line between savior and tyrant is often drawn in fire. In time, the scars of war faded, though they never disappeared completely. The galaxy remembered, not in fear, but in caution. The phrase Earth remembers became not a warning, but a hope, a belief that even in the face of destruction, there was always a chance to rebuild.